Hello guys, and welcome to a new WARNO video today by me, Vulcan. In this one I have for you a 10 versus 10 on Triple Strike, and I'm going to be playing with the new 152nd Infantry. This is the new French infantry division that was added in the latest Nemesis DLC, Plateau d'Albion. It has a lot of really cool, interesting units, so let's have a look at what I've got going down. I'm going to be starting here with 4 units of Commandos coming in with the VIBs. The VIB is a non-amphibious variant of the VAB. It comes armed with a T-20, which can target helicopters and aircraft. Really useful against helicopters though, and it makes this combination a very strong start. Now here I was kind of pushing my luck to see how far up I could get. This Commando though, unfortunately, going one step too far, picked off by some enemy infantry. These Commandos dropped off a little bit further back. Going to be able to take out an enemy infantry unit in the truck there, so that wasn't too bad. And these Commandos, interesting loadout. They have 7 FAMAS, they have a machine gun, and they have the FRF2, which is a full-blown sniper rifle which can target enemy ground forces at 1,200 meters. So at range, this can be pretty effective, especially in decent numbers, and supported by the VIB, you can chew up enemy infantry squads very quickly indeed. So you can see the Spetsnaz GRU there really suffering because of that combination. However, I am able to still be outnumbered, and with the number of Desantniki rushing us down, the shock trait not going to be enough to keep these commandos alive. And then my second squad of commandos on the right hand side going to be bumping into a lot of BMD2s. So yeah, still suffering under the weight of a serious amount of enemy forces. I do have multiple AMX 1390s here that are trying to hold the front line against the BMD2s, but really not hitting the mark and getting taken out by the ATGMs very quickly from those IFVs. Reservists forced to unload very quickly and try and get into cover. But this unit going to be routing. That does actually save it from the auto cannon fire slightly. But with the T-80BVs coming over the horizon, that poor reservist unit going to get taken out. Now I decided to play on this side of the map with the 152nd because I thought it would give me a good opportunity to try out the infantry in closer combat. I don't think that they are very good at close combat. They get outmatched by specialized close range infantry squads which have maybe satchels or napalm launchers, that kind of thing. So I was just wanting to see if the reservists could maybe overwhelm enemy forces in larger numbers due to their cheap cost. So that was part of it. Also, it's going to allow me to potentially flank on the side of this map later on. Now back here we do have another of the new units, the Crowtow. This is the radar variant that comes with the R440 radar missiles. Now the big downfall of the Crowtow really is its lack of range compared to other better long-range radar missiles. So 3,525 meters is a little restrictive. So you'll see in this scenario where the thermobaric Su-24 comes over and absolutely nukes my reservist, they couldn't fire. They were out of range. Whereas if these were like Ihawks or Ronin 3s, then we might have been able to get a shot off. So you do have to make sure that these Crowtows are a bit closer than your sort of generic long-range radar AA. Now I have decided to bring up the Alouette 3 here. I believe these are actually pretty good at taking out IFVs. So where the BMD2s are concerned, I feel like the Alouette can do a decent job with its 19 penetration of taking those out. It's not going to be a very good choice against like heavy tanks because it's not going to do much through the front armor. But you might be able to get a cheeky side shot. The big problem, I guess, is that the AS-11 hangs out in the sky for a very long time. It's a super slow missile, and so there's plenty of time to get that front armor facing. Anyway, more reinforcements on the way. We've got the Marines arriving with their Apalas. Apalas, really awesome launcher in WARNO. High rate of fire and really strong penetration. So, great combination, especially with their increased range as well. In this case, the Desantniki going to get hit by the 50 cals of the VABs, Really, really risky on my part because the RPG could easily have taken out my Marines there. But I do manage to unload them in time. Now we're going to be trying out a Super Etendard, one of the new fighters that has been added to the game, or multi-role fighter, I suppose it is. Really decent cluster strike there. Unfortunately, going to be taken out off the edge of the map. But we did manage to get the kill in. Now, if I sort of fire positioned that in the center, that might have been a double kill onto these T-80BVs. At the end of the day, the Super Etendard was positive in that trade in terms of points, but overall, in the long run, probably not the best of trades. Because the way that sort of heavy tank and air engagements work is, like, if you only kill one tank with an aircraft and then the aircraft dies, they're always going to have more tanks than you have aircraft, and eventually they will overwhelm you. So you've got to make sure that you try and trade at least 2 for 1 with your aircraft where possible. So in that case, not an ideal trade because the other T-80BVs just going to move back and get repaired anyway. Finally got a squirrel on the field. I was just seeing how maneuverable this was, that's why it's moving around like that. And turns out, pretty maneuverable. This is just a normal 40-point Recon Helicopter. Recon Helicopters, pretty useful just because they have elevated line of sight. So they can kind of see over objects that your other infantry recon might not be able to, or other ground-based recon in general might not be able to. So just going to be having that hovering back with the Alouette to make sure that the Alouette has sight on target. But nothing to see so far as the Apalas Marines continue to move forwards. Now the Marines in this case, they come with the Resolute trait. Now this is where I was mentioning that they're not very good at close range because they don't have shock, right? They do have Resolute, but they don't have shock. And so any enemy unit at close range that does have shock is going to beat you if it can get within the shock range. And that makes these pretty tough to use. And the Resolute trait does mean that they will take less suppression in combat. So against units that don't have that trait, technically, they should hold their cohesion longer. But you can see here both of these were already lacking cohesion moving into this engagement, and now the Usileni and the Pulamachiki are going to be able to get the better of my 2 Marine squads there. On the right hand side, the Mi-24P going to be making things difficult for that Marine squad, and the VIB is too far back at the moment to provide a 50 cal fire. You might also notice on this right hand side my Crowtows going on a bit of a drive up to the top of this mountain. Driving all the way up here. I thought it might be an interesting idea to see if we could shoot any aircraft down from the top of this mountain. So that's what I was going for. Mi-24P too low down to even shoot though. So it turned out that this probably was not the best idea. I'm trying to get them into a place where they have a decent line of sight, because at the moment this one down in a bit of a ditch in between, not going to have any line of sight whatsoever against aircraft flying by, because most aircraft are going to actually be flying lower than the top of this mountain. So VAB is finally getting a bit of 50 cal fire on target. TRM 10,000 on the way. These TRM 10,000s, really nice supply vehicle. 2,000 supply for 60 points. Not bad at all. Also, you might have noticed on Triple Strike, yeah, this side of the map, they removed a lot of this forest in order to add another road here, which kind of opened up this left side quite substantially. And I think it's really made this left side a lot more interesting, so that was really cool. Now on the back side, I am going to be trying out the 155s, these big howitzers. Now, considering these have only like 3 rates of fire, they actually do fire pretty quickly. It's just they take a while to reload. So you'll notice that they're definitely firing much more quickly than you would imagine. Their volley is pretty strong. So this Strela here, going to be hit by that artillery. And a direct hit there, going to be taking half of its health off. So where these are going to be really strong is when you're targeting enemy buildings and kind of chipping away enemy infantry when you're continuing to engage them. So whilst we didn't manage to get the kill there due to the poor dispersion, I think that the way that they fire is actually not too bad. So I'm just going to be queuing up a bunch of orders here to make sure that I'm continuing to make use of those artillery pieces. Reservists here, unfortunately getting overrun by the Thessaloniki. Not really much chance for those reservists to win against the shock traits of the Thessaloniki. Just going to be making sure to get my TRM 10,000 out there so that we're not giving away free supply. Going to be bringing in another one to the left hand side to make sure that my marines are up to scratch. However, you can hear on the backside the howitzers firing away once again. I've also brought in a couple more. We now have 4 of them, and that way we're going to be able to saturate these targets more substantially and potentially pick off these units. But so far, all of my infantry have been losing out. And this generally is how it feels like. I think in a town situation where you're able to stop the enemy from getting within shock range, the infantry can be very good. But in these sort of forest engagements and in maybe urban areas where you can hop pretty quickly through buildings on top of each other, you're going to be having a bad time. Now my Alouette here ended up using up all of its AS-11s, so we're just going to be sending that back to base. This Marine force, not too bad on cohesion, so now just going to be moving that up to help out with the Mussolini. Artillery coming in from the 155s over on the right and the AMX Alpha 1s. Help us weaken this left flank. More reservists on the way, even more. And I'm also going to be bringing in the French military police. So these military police are actually vital for this division, because the military police trait grants a suppression regeneration bonus, which allows you to recover from cohesion faster. It's very useful in most divisions, to be honest, but quite often there will be other alternatives for infantry that you would rather have than a military police. In this division, I think the military police is super important, because you'll notice how like my Marines have been really low on cohesion for a very long time now. And having a military police near them will help sort that out much quicker. And then you can make much more use out of the resolute trait on your Marines. And in the case of the reservists, remove the reservist trait. So the gendarme, really important for both those situations. So reservists pushing forwards now with the artillery helping us out. The M109's here from Mickey. We are able to take advantage of the stun to get damage on target. BAB moving forwards, getting the 50 cal on target there. Now since these Crowtows had managed to fire quite a few missiles but kept missing, I decided to just wheel them all the way back down here. Also, since they had fired on top of that hill, it's likely that they're going to try and deal with it soon, so that's why I decided to just get them out of there. So artillery all getting ready now to fire at the same target. See the rocket artillery being fired up on top of the ridge there. Crowtow's already out of the way. So Alouette's gone back to the FOB and coming back forwards. I'm not necessarily sure that you need a FOB in this division. If you are going to go for these 4 howitzers, then maybe, but otherwise probably not. Now I am being pretty lazy with these as well. Ideally, every time you fire a volley, you should be picking them up and moving them. In this case, getting pretty lucky that I'm not being counter-batteried, but I think that's because sometimes people assume that people will move their artillery, and it takes them a little while to realize when artillery is not being moved. Either way, now joined by Mickey's engineers with flash launchers, this is where our reservists can really shine, because we can allow Mickey to help remove the enemy cohesion and help stun enemy infantry, and then we can overwhelm them with the numbers of the reservists. Whereas I feel like the numbers of the reservists on their own don't really do the trick, especially if I were to bump into like enemy sappery, especially with like RPO launchers. That's going to be a bad time. So now we have more Marines or reservists on the way. I also have a leader, so trying to make basically the combination of both a leader and the military police to really just buff up the reservists quite substantially. And you can see here that the reservist trait has been replaced by the military police trait here, so those are now much better than they were before. And I'm also going to be having this military police follow my Marines so they can make good progress and get some good shots on target with the Appalachian. On the backside here, we've got some of the new Recon cars on the way, the EBR 90s, and these are going to be having a great show today of how effective these things can be. Now, I was mentioning how this division not going to be doing so well in a 10v10 because of the head-on. Doesn't really allow you to make a lot of these units shine. But if you're able to get a good flank on with the fast vehicles that they have to offer, like the EBR 90s, like the AMLs, then I think you're actually in for a much better time. So that's what I'm going to be attempting to do here as you see the EBR 90s heading over to the left-hand side. Reservists currently trying to get the better of a T-80BV here. Unfortunately, the LRAC 73 only has 13 penetration, so we're slowly chipping down the T-80, but very, very slowly. BAB is managing to help take out the sub-heavy RPO at least, and you'll notice that in the center of this sector here, some BMPs came down. Now I managed to get the ambush on with the Appalachian, so 2 of the BMDs went down in the open. The last one is getting stunned constantly by the T-20s, but I'm more concerned about getting the Appalachian on target of this T-80 so that it stops firing into my infantry here. The artillery going to be coming in hot and doing a decent amount of damage there. I think that was Mickey's artillery, not my own. Since he's left it on low health, the Appalachian trying to get into position, just finish it off, and down it goes. So nice kill, but the ZU-23-2 on the backside defensively gonna do a lot of damage. Or Bigot strike again on the right hand side as the thermobaric bombs land and wipe out quite a lot of infantry. But here go the EBRs. So with the BMD2s out of the way, the EBRs are actually going to have a decent chance to do a lot of damage here. The ZG-23 just got taken out. I can take out the BTRs as well, because they aren't able to shoot back at us. The Luaz is going to be going down there, just picking off bits and pieces for the time being. I'm going to be bringing up a Magister as well. This Magister is going to be able to have sort of even better line of sight than a helicopter, because it's getting that very good optics, but even higher up. Just going to be sort of having that come in on the left-hand side here. Try and spot some enemy forces. And in doing so, we can look for targets with the EBR. Now, unfortunately, my Magister automatically went for the attack onto the Thessaloniki, so in future, got to remember to turn off the weapons on that aircraft if you want it to just be looping and not automatically attack. But really nice kill here from the EBR. Actually managed to side shot a T-80 whilst it was reversing away from its engagement on the right side here. We also managed to take out the Strela 10M. So the flanking engagement really coming to fruition here. The Metis actually struggling to get its ATGM on target thanks to the T-20. But it's only a matter of time now until these EBRs get a shot on target. We take out the BTR. We're going to have the Metis taken out by the T-20. And now these two can take out the Vasilik that's left over here as well. MI8, MT8 taken out by artillery. Or was that the T-20? Probably. But this EBR now coming out of the tree line, looking for even more kills here. But being all sneaky beaky like as we start to engage the enemy nonners further back. Now the nice thing about these EBRs is they have 85 km/h off-road speed. So very, very good at zooming up on this left-hand side. And you see I'm going to be able to take advantage of these lightly armoured vehicles very, very well. And if I can kill a couple of nonners, that's really going to shut down a lot of enemy artillery support. So there goes the second. And each of those nonners is worth like 100 points. So killing them with my EBRs is paying them off quite nicely. Also going to be bumping into the grad here, 135 point grad. You can see there's the Strela 10M and Mystical here as well. So even more targets. The BMD1 would be a nice kill. And whilst these two are continuing their engagement there, I am going to be bringing up more of these EBRs. So starting to get a lot of good shots in. The MD1 goes down. Grad was finally killed off. I'm going to be killing off the supply here, making sure we get rid of that. Artillery is coming in onto the T-80BV. That is going to force it back, absolutely annihilate the cohesion and do some serious damage. And this is when I notice my chance to pounce. The T-80's falling back, showing rear armor. All it takes is a side shot or two from the EBR-90s to get the job done. Down it goes. Turret flying off as the EBR finds the shot. Unfortunately, enemy aircraft going to be coming in to spoil the fun. But these Strelas running for their lives as the EBRs spread out and lead the way for Warm Conehead's AML 90s to follow up. Strela surviving for now, but eventually taken out. And those EBR 90s absolutely cutting open the left flank of this side. It was absolutely huge, the amount of damage we managed to do with these EBR 90s. Those very, very interesting looking vehicles, putting on quite the show for us. Unfortunately, the BMD3 here eventually cleaning those up, as they don't have much armor at all. But they certainly did a fantastic amount of damage, and now I'm bringing up the AML 90s with the Recon. Then they're going to be able to potentially support a push from the Reservists. I did have quite a few units like hanging about further back. You can see the Crowtows here that have just been sat on the side of the hill. Probably should have had them moving up with me at some point. But it was a lot of fun to push up with those EBR 90s, and I feel like in a 1v1 there's going to be a lot of opportunities to do plays like that, where you have the EBR 90s pushing around on all the roads that aren't protected. The AML 90s are going to be able to do the same, and yeah, things are going to get really, really difficult for your opponent. Now you see there the thermobaric bombs not killing this reservist squad when you'd probably expect them to do so. I do feel like sometimes the explosions for those thermobarics are not quite like wide enough. Like I don't think the blast radius is big enough, because I feel like the reservists there would just get absolutely annihilated by that, realistically. And I wouldn't mind seeing those thermobaric bombs be buffed a bit, because the HE I feel like is just better at the moment. Anyway, regardless, we're talking about the 152nd. And the AMR 90s so far, you can see they're trying to get these into position. So I've got an AMR 90 pushing up here to engage the T-62, and then I'm going to be able to poke my head out with the other AMR 90 in order to kill this one off. So AMR 90 is going to be engaging the BRDM Conkers at the moment. I'm going to have to be forced to smoke that off. But moving through the smoke, I'm going to push up with this AMR 90, and we're going to trade with the T-62. Now an AMR 90 is 80 points. A T-62, that T-62 is like 100 and 35 points. So really good kill for us. As you can see across the map, game's going pretty well. We are on the plus 10 as we've managed to completely capture Hotel. In the center, we are in full control of Foxtrot, and on the right hand side, things are still 50-50. So plus 10 overall, a large lead for our team. My artillery still firing away on the backside here, actually getting pretty low on ammo now. But yeah, I feel like these guns, they could be very useful to help whittle down enemy infantry. But I didn't find that they had too much effect on enemy armor, just because the dispersion is like a little bit too much to be effective in that situation. We're going to be bringing in a Super Etendard at the end here. Didn't have much chance to show off the Super Etendards. I feel like at the moment, because everyone's trying out the 76, there's so many MiG-31s in the sky, and it makes it exceptionally difficult to get value out of aircraft. But Etendard coming in, really cool looking aircraft with those AS-30s, looking for a kill onto any enemy armor that I can find. But as I mentioned, MiG-31 straight away for Super Etendard, gonna be running away as quickly as possible. Now, what I have found is that Super Etendards generally play a lot like Jaguars from the British, so sort of wondering how they play. That is more or less it. Well, there you go. That is victory. And after 27 minutes and 13 seconds, we ended up with 3,335 kills to 2,885 losses. And I thought that this game was a good example of how the division can potentially play, with these EBR-90s coming in and just cutting everything to pieces at the right moment. Especially with the T-80BVs being like chipped and forced back by enemy artillery, or like, yeah, by enemy artillery, and then we come in and hit the side shots. I think it works out quite nicely. But the trouble is, you'd have to find a way to do that with this division, and I'm not sure your own artillery would do that, because in this case, it was Mickey's M109s that were causing the damage and the cohesion loss that forced the T-80BVs to fall back, and then the EBR-90s came in and found the kills. But I guess if you just had a bunch of EBR-90s sort of spread out and then sort of ganged up on a heavier tank at the same time, you could probably just get side shots in anyway, and then the T-80 would lose cohesion regardless. But yeah, in the end, yeah, the 155's not really getting as many kills as I would have hoped. I feel like the infantry in this division is a little bit weak, considering it is an infantry division specifically. So it really comes down to making great use of numbers in the reservists, but that is kind of counteracted by the opposing division in the form of like the thermobaric bombs and the HE bombs from the Su-24s. You can't really bunch them up as much as you necessarily need to. But yeah, you want to make sure you got military place. You want to make sure you got a leader with those reservist units when you are using them, and then probably the same even with the with all of the infantry in this division. It kind of needs that push, that extra couple buffs to make them able to take on specialist close range infantry like the SPEEDY RPO here, for example. Now you can of course use your VABs and T20s, VAB, to kill the SPEEDY RPO and like SPEEDY at close range, but microing that in and out, if there's other Desaniki like BMD for example nearby, then that might be kind of difficult. It's a difficult division to play. I genuinely think it is, but it's a very interesting one, and it certainly has some very cool units. But that is it for now. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed that look at the 152nd Infantry. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.